Let's get started.
Let's get started. Tell us where you are today and where you're from. So hopefully the connection between the two things can tell us a little bit, can tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Mauro. So my name is Rickard Damm. I'm currently living and working in Germany. However, I'm Swedish from the beginning, but I also grew up in the UK. So my traversal here has been sort of a Europe bound in that sense, but been working globally for global companies for the most part of my career.
And so, do you consider yourself a pessimist or an optimist? And another way to look at the same question is, do you think the world is getting better or it's getting worse?
Yeah, I think that question is really, really interesting, and it will be something that maybe superficially most people will say that they're optimists, right? The general like society trains us to be like to tell people that you're optimistic, right? This is the winners are always the optimistic people, etc. But if you look at it from another perspective, many very successful people in the world are skeptical and pessimistic in that sense. Like many CEOs will, when I talk to them in corporate environments, they are the ones who have the most brutal negative questions towards yourself, and like you need to answer to the most negative sort of outlook of life, and they have a risk, very much like a portfolio of risks that they always think about. So from that perspective, I personally really truly believe that I'm an optimist. I'm working with innovation, and I always see the glass as half full, and I always see opportunity around the corner, and I always see that. But the problem with that is that you become, in the eyes of certain people, a bit naive, right? So they see you as, okay, this guy, he thinks he can solve everything, but what about A, B, C, D, etc. And the thing is, the pessimists are not always wrong either. Like this is the conflict that we always have to have. I think it's really good that we have both ends of this table in companies, for instance, and in society. The important part is that you are constructive in this, so that you don't let pessimism sort of darken your entire worldview, and that you, at the end of the day, can enjoy life still. That's somehow, I don't know if that makes sense, but I see that people who are pessimists and who say that they are still can enjoy life because they somehow have a constructive view on this.
But when you have these conversations with the boards and the CEOs that you're saying, are these conversations based on data, on evidence, and what are the metrics for this skepticism or this pessimism? So is this based, is there something that we can measure, or is just a general feeling? And I know something like hope for the best, but get ready for the worst. And in the end, things end up advancing, or is like, yes, we believe like the world will be a very dangerous place or a worse place in 10 years. So let's get ready for that. And if this is the case, do you see metrics to measure this, or it's like rule of thumb and guessing and educated guessing and consultancy, things like this? What are the metrics?
I think this is where maybe there's a conflict, and an interesting conflict in your questions, because I don't think they are addressing exactly the same thing. So being a bit of a pessimist and skeptical doesn't mean that you don't have a view of that the world is getting better. So those things, I don't think they mean the same thing. So in many lines of work, many successful companies, you will see people with engineering backgrounds and very analytical people rise to the top, right? This is the general scientist kind of mindset here, is that you are inherently skeptical to every data point that you see, and everything that you get pitched and everything that you see get presented to yourself. Your immediate knee-jerk reaction as an engineer, as a scientist, is that, oh, I need to poke a hole in this. Like, what is the problem? There needs to be something. There's this analytical sort of mindset, which manifests itself to becoming, like, over time, you become sort of a bit of a skeptical, pessimistic kind of person in one way, but you're constructive enough to understand that if we solve all of these problems, the world will get better, right? Does this make sense to you?
Yes, even though, like, I think you're talking about people being critical, and engineers and scientists are very, should be very, very critical. But I don't think it's pessimism.
Okay.
So it's a good point. Is it being critical makes you a pessimist? I don't think so. At the same time, these engineers, they trust in basic principles, right? It's very difficult for you to see an engineer questioning the laws of thermodynamics.
Exactly.
And I think that this belief allows you to be critical and to move forward at the same time, because you can trust these basic principles if you have the scientific background to distinguish what you can trust, what you cannot trust.
No, but this is a very, very good point, and I think it's depending on sort of what your persona is like in general. If we just look at general society as such, it's today very, very easy to get into a pessimistic mindset based on just news cycles and general for everything. Like, is the world getting better? I would guess if you go out on town, you will. I'm not sure that you will get like 90% of people saying that the world is getting better. Probably contrary, like probably the complete opposite, because there's climate, there's immigration, there's like all of these like hot topics. There's always something, right? That there's forest fires, and there's like you would really see. I think in general, it's very easy to fall into that trap too, starting out as a critic and then becoming sort of pessimistic. The more you read about things, you sort of have a hard time digesting it.
Yes, but I think this is selection bias, right?
Yeah.
Or availability bias, right? What gets to you and what eventually gets to your attention is bias, right? Towards what is available to you. So if we had the chance to get a broader or access to more data, or to longer data trends, maybe we could be more optimistic, because I believe, like, and that's why I think it's so important nowadays, dashboards, like there's this incredible website Your World in Data, that you can see all these trends, and wow, it's very difficult to look at objective metrics, like people under the line of poverty, whatever you consider line of poverty, or access to water, access to energy, and birth, child death rate.
Yes,
all these markers are improving. So I think it's harder to, if you have access to the data, to the whole data, right? Not just to a window of data that was selected by someone else, that you maybe people could be more optimistic.
I think you're absolutely right there. Maybe this is a point to somehow, to talk about a little bit, is the the inherent adaptability and the ingenuity of humanity, right? The humanity will not end because of climate crisis, but we have to change, right? That's one of these big things that's like a big headworm for many people, is that the Earth will not vanish. It will continue
Yes,
to evolve,
because
right?
the argument for many pessimists is always like, if we keep doing this, we are going to end there.
Yeah, the doomsday
Never
sort of
we
out.
keep,
Yeah,
yes, like
yeah,
they don't assume that we can change the way we do things, and we have done this over and over and over through history. There's an incredible book called The Rational Optimist by Matt Hadley, where he shows this. There's the whole book is about it, but there are other ones, um, and that's it. If you look at the long-term trends, is very interesting. Another thing that media should do more often, or if not media, people who want to communicate stuff, is to make comparisons, right? Because the human brain is very bad at absolute numbers, absolute data. And it's even worse at very large or very small probabilities. We don't know how to evaluate 0.01 risk of anything. So the way we deal with that is either we increase the risk, we bring it to 1, or we ignore it, like it's 0. If it's 0.001, it's 0. Well, no,
yeah,
that's 1 in 1,000. It's actually not that small, and but we don't know how to do this. So many times a way to do this is to compare. Okay, so we have terrible things that are happening, like what it's happening in Afghanistan now, that at least in my opinion is very bad. But can you compare with what was happening 100 years ago, 500 years ago? And of course, let's look at the whole world. How many things like Afghanistan are happening around the world? How many were, like 100 years ago, maybe 50 years ago? And those comparisons, they are very helpful to get people to have a good sense of what is really happening.
Yes, I think this is a very, very good point, and it somehow leads into some things that I say are challenges, like in the political landscape, is where we're living in a world with the tyranny of the minority, so to speak. And it comes back to exactly what you're saying. It's like if there's a subgroup or some sort of sub happening that is not, like, we don't compare it to different things. Like exactly like you're saying, it's very easy to be an interest group today and generate a lot of buzz around your cause, and then it becomes sort of like, it finds its way into places where, or we don't weigh things against each other. That's what I'm saying. Because the human mind, like you're saying, we have a linear mind, right? So if we see 10 people screaming, then we automatically think, we extrapolate that into some sort of linear context instead of looking at it. Yeah, so you're absolutely right.
So we were like in the last a couple of minutes, we were talking about these big challenges ahead. We mentioned one or two. What do you think are the big challenges ahead? And maybe list like 3 for us not to sound too pessimistic.
Yeah, no. I actually think that we have these cycles of mass media cycles, and I think we're in a mass media cycle right now where we have allowed democracy to come under attack in many ways. In that sense, like social media, it's sort of beaten to death already a little bit, but it's something that we shouldn't stop at. As global leaders, as citizens, we really need to think about what our internet presence and sort of the new mass medias are promoting in terms of democracy. And we can already see that. I talked about the tyranny of the minority, so to speak, where we can have really leaders today who are becoming experts at capitalizing on on the like minority interest groups. As long as you have as many of those as possible that you can gather around the cause, which is not the majority's sort of will, you can still get your will through. And it's something that we have seen happening in many places around the world, and that's something that I really think is a problem, and especially the social media lends itself so well to xenophobic, like alarmism, clickbait, nationalism. Like this is so well suited for social media that I think that's a humongous problem that we have, and we really have to address it. And it's something that like people can actually do by themselves, like just stop sharing shit. That is not that's just the first thing, and then I think this is a big problem that we will. Uh, uh, I have some hope there. To be honest, like I have teenage kids, and they are so much more savvy than the older generation. So our age and older are the ones who are really the problem right now. For they have captured sort of the entire democracy under their like stupidity, and I think the younger generation are much more savvy and much more smart about it.
Could be.
Yeah.
I never thought about this. Of course, I thought I agree with you with the risk in democracy, and I think the tools that we use for democracy are outdated. They are old. They are not fast enough. Like, why do we have to run election every 4 years?
Yeah.
Like, why? What the representation mechanisms are? They are definitely not coping with the changes that technology are introducing to society. So the society maybe wants to could adapt better or faster to these changes, but it can't because the tools that it has are not fast enough, are slow, are very slow. And during the pandemic, that was like extremely clear, right? Even if politicians wanted, they could not adapt fast enough to the things that the virus were imposing. And I mean, like, create funding mechanisms for research, or create social benefits for, or change route. So we don't have, we lack innovation, I believe, in these social sciences, and working with biotechnology that has a lot of concern from the society. I can especially see that we don't have the tool. It's harder to create. I mean, the technical part of creating a GMO is, in my opinion, and I know how hard it is, easier than to communicate to people that are going to benefit from that GMO, that it is safe, that they are going to benefit. So this social part is maybe harder than the technical part, and I think we can extrapolate that in many other fields. To communicate the innovation is harder than to do the innovation itself, which is already hard.
I agree.
You just had one challenge. Is there another one? And I can put the other question on the top of this. Did you choose one of these challenges for you to address, or for you to try to solve? Do you feel that things that you do are connected with one of these big challenges?
That's a really great question. Like, you should go towards yourself first. I'm not. First of all, I'm not on the political space in the political space at all, so I don't engage in it in that sense. It was just a general worry. What I think here is what maybe in that sense I contribute with is very minute unless we are talking about our network, if you wish, Mauro, in that sense. Like the people that we reach through our communication, through science, through that kind of stuff, etc. Because the other challenges are things that are, I mean, for instance, we need to understand that we're going into like not a fossil free, but like a society with much less dependency on fossil fuels. Another thing is meat and meat production. Like for instance, I think the majority in 30 years, the majority of our proteins will come from probably factory grown meat and stuff like this instead. And these kind of things is mostly so far on your choice of lifestyle, but working in large companies, working in science, this is sort of like the way we have to drive society forward as well, is that we have to make sure that we have the technology and we contribute to these kind of things in the future. Those things are probably on top of my head at least.
But you work in a telecommunications. You work in the telecommunications sector. I know you are in a telecommunication company now, but I understand that you've been in this sector for a long time. How do you see, and somehow we are just talking about getting people together and network and how the news can spread and how social media can spread. And this is only possible because people are connected, and they are connected through these telecommunications companies and innovations. Do you see this contributing, and what are the challenges then in this getting people connected, but without this connection isolating them one way or another? Is that in the mind of a telecommunication company, like how they are going to use this connectivity that they provide?
So in general, I would say that in terms of how people use the connectivity, in terms of like what I was telling you about here, like one of our crucial roles is, of course, to make sure that the connectivity is distributed, so to speak, fairly, like that we don't block stuff or steer people into certain directions. That's a big thing for our industry, and it's also part of the regulation, of course. The other part is to make sure that we have the best connectivity possible for everybody out there. So everybody should have the opportunity and draw the benefits of high-speed internet. Like that's one thing that is actually in today's society, if you think about equality, if you think about trying to empower people that haven't got the means, having affordable, good connectivity, high quality, that's actually one of the most important factors in today's society. And now I'm not only talking about underserved countries, it's actually, there could be underserved communities too in different countries that we sometimes forget about. But being part of that, we're talking 5G, all this kind of stuff. There is no sort of killer application, I don't think, for these technologies. The killer application is actually people coming online with higher speed internet and not being left behind. That is like the killer application for me.
Yeah, while you were talking, I remember I had a conversation with the head of sustainability for BASF, for Bayer, last year, and she was telling that their program to improve sustainability in agriculture and to improve productivity, on the top of their list was to bring internet connection to rural areas.
Yeah,
because they don't have it, and I can guarantee to you that in Brazil, a lot of rural areas that are the second largest food producers in the world, a lot of areas are not served by internet signal, and so these guys they don't know, I don't know, weather forecasts or a lot of stuff that comes with connectivity.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
I can
one
just
of
no, but it's an excellent example. And I was a mentor for a social entrepreneur from Nepal who had exactly the same thing. So he was working on an app, and this is not only about weather forecast. That was one part of it, but trying to make first of all getting sponsorship to get smartphones in the farmers' hands. But the other part is the application. With them. First of all, of course, the weather. The other part was selling their produce in the right market at the right
of
time.
course.
That was the other part, so that they got the most amount of yield from their crop. The third part, which is really interesting, is that all farmers, and you know this much better than me, they run into problems with different types of, mal growth or whatever it is, some sort of disease on the plant, some sort of whatever it is, and they many times don't have no idea what it is. So they go and ask their neighbors, and it's all built on this sort of uh, inherited knowledge. What if we could just circumvent that, and then you take a picture of this, and then you get access to a global knowledge base of what this actually is, and you can fix it. Maybe this is, of course, where the buyers of the world are super interested in this kind of app
Yes.
because they have the chemicals, but maybe you can fix it in some other way. So you increase the probability of actually having sustainable life just by connectivity in this case.
Okay, so I have a question that I didn't
Yeah.
prepare, but arise from this. It what's your? Did you choose telecommunications or telecommunications chose you? So it was an opportunity, and then you came to it because it's definitely a global challenge. Maybe like top three of the list.
Yeah.
But you didn't mention it when we were talking about the challenges, and so it came to my mind. Was it? Did you choose to go into this sector? It was something that happened, or it was an opportunity and you took it, and you're still there. And maybe if I can ask, do you plan to? Is there a change in your mind? Do you plan to move to change sector and to change challenge, or to stay on it?
Yeah. It's such a good wake-up call because I agree that it's one of the biggest challenges and opportunities for humanity but I'm so much into this, like I have tunnel vision because I've been working with this for so long. So I'm here, like I am very purpose driven in that sense that I really like contributing something big, like to society. I was working in the health medical technology space before 15, 20 years ago, which was also very purpose driven. Even though I'm not a doctor, I got the opportunity. It felt like, at least, with better software, we were able to do more diagnosis. Like it felt like we were contributing somehow. Getting into the telecommunication space, of course, being Swedish, going into Ericsson, that's somehow like it's not an uncommon path, but it still feels like the entire uh, um, mission of Ericsson, and also now where I'm working today, is really to connect more people to really benefit from this connected society. So it's been very deeply a deep part of my motivation, of course. And to answer your real question here, I have no plans of changing careers in that sense. I really love what I'm doing, and I, like you're saying, even though of course we're in this to make money, right, as a company, but we also somehow, I think, disproportionately also contribute to the growth and the wealth of countries as well in terms of telecommunications. So you're absolutely right. I'm just in this tunnel vision mode, so I didn't talk about it.
Oh, then maybe a question to for us to explore more some other time is on on the business model of these big missions, right?
Mm.
Because I try to understand, for example, why something so good to humanity, like genetically modified organisms, are face so much resistance from society, right? And the only explanation that I find is bad community. It has nothing to do with the GMO itself. It's more about the business model that maybe were predatory or were abusive, and that led to prejudice against the the things that they could connect to the business model. So it was kind of hard to attack or personalize the business model itself, and then you go to the next best thing, and you could personalize the GMO, you could create a narrative, but the problem was never the technology itself, it was the business model. And it's always fair to make money, but I still see in the world a lot of predatory business models, and in which big companies, they, instead of bringing the newest, cheapest, best technology to you, they still try to benefit from old technologies, to get the most value, not value, but like to get more people to still paying for old things when you could have replaced, simply because you have to it's from the business perspective, it can make sense to explore a technology to the limit, to the limit that.
Theoretically, what you're
And I
addressing
can
is
see
something.
telecommunications company in this area, right?
Well, I don't agree completely, but I naturally then working on the inside, I really believe that we're trying to provide a utility to humanity. I really believe that, and it costs money to run it, and I think that's why we also we don't have monopolies on telecommunication. It should be, and what you're addressing here, if we talk in the bigger scale of things, with everything that from from chemicals to medicine, whatever it is, and you're talking about outdated technology. This is something that like capitalism should solve, right? In that sense, is that if there's something better out there that provides higher utility at a lower cost than what is there, the new entrant should be able to compete in this market, right? And then this is classic disruption, 101 in that sense. Then there are a lot of barriers to entry in many markets. Like that could be regulatory, there could be things like patent portfolios, and infrastructure, these kind of things, of course. And this is where the regulators usually come into place, is that we should be able to allow in all industries the right amount of competition, so that the consumer doesn't get outdated technology to high price just for it should be like fixed in that sense. And of course there are always markets that are not regulated in the right way, because the regulators don't have time to get, like, they are not fast enough maybe. But I would say for telecommunications, for instance, I think that has been around for so long that I'm not too worried here. I think consumers are benefiting from it net. Like there's a net positive to consumers and society from regulation in like that we have. But of course, everything can be better. Of course, I agree.
How can so from what we have talked so far, I can see that you are kind of doing your part. How do you think people can help you or this cause that you are involved in? So if people want to contribute, how do you see them? Is that something that goes in your mind? What people could do? How people could help?
Yeah, the general way of helping the industry and society forward in the kind of business that I am is usually in terms of innovation and disruptive innovation, and trying to find better ways, more cost-efficient ways, and completely new ways of doing, like providing a certain utility and a value. In that sense, I think the help that we're getting as an industry in provoking us and making us uncomfortable to move forward quicker is really coming from entrepreneurs and coming from companies that are starting off their life without legacy at all. So in that sense, if you look at entrepreneurs in any kind of space that is digital, always somehow end up on our radar, and we either react or we somehow we become better from that. So as well, and sometimes the innovators in this sense, they will take that market, win that, whatever we want to call it. But at the end of the day, the industry would move forward. I would say, like for instance, without lots of innovation in the space, and a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't think we would have the same cost base that we have today. Like we get pressure to lower our costs to provide more for the same, etc.
Okay. So I have three questions. What is the book that you are reading now?
Oh, I have several. It's called something around organizations. I don't remember what it was called. It's Reframing Organizations.
Okay, great. So any special reason why you are reading this?
No, it's just like I think this is in the category of general management literature that you have to somehow it's sometimes it's not about the content of the actual book and following it. It's more about giving yourself a punch in the stomach to sort of remember that you're actually here to become better all the time. Also, we shouldn't stagnate. So it's a little bit on that line.
Okay. And the second question is, how do you allocate your time?
So I have to give you a little bit of context then, is that I'm working in a very large company. I'm a manager of quite a big program in that sense. So a lot of my time is spent, so I would say half of the time is probably spent on trying to mitigate and fix problems for the teams, so that we try to clear things out of the way. And there's always things that come up, and a lot of it has to do with trying to communicate and talk to different people. Like this is the general connector part of my job. Quarter of the time is probably spent on doing actual reviews of material and bettering that and working on that. And then another quarter of the time is probably spent on trying to talking individually to people in the team. So that's roughly what my day looks like. So it's a lot of meetings, of course, but it's not meetings where I just sit back and look at a presentation.
Okay, but that's at work. Like, do you take an hour-long lunch, 15 minutes long lunch? Do you walk to work? Do you sleep 5 hours,
Yeah,
8
I have
hours, 3 hours?
I have three kids that are teenagers, so getting them to school in the morning is always a hectic
Yes,
activity in the morning.
big.
So very often I end up either taking the bike or taking the car to work, whatever is fastest that day. So mornings are like that. Afternoons is usually trying to eat with the family, trying to socialize with them, picking somebody up from sports or something like this, and then trying to do some sort of activity like playing golf, tennis, or that kind of stuff. It's very much family time, I would say.
Yes, I can see that in how having kids has changed my schedule. I used to be a very erratic person, like doing things whenever I wanted, whatever I wanted. And wow, I changed it to a person that now, okay, I'm going to walk from 8:43 to like 9
Yes.
9:17. And yes, and there's something else waiting for you in those 3 minutes. They are there for a reason. So it's been very interesting how I went from being completely erratic to being much
But it
more
changes.
regular.
Yeah. But Mauro, it changes. So my oldest is 17, youngest 13. So things are changing. At that age, all of a sudden, it's like I can actually decide to do something different this afternoon. It doesn't matter. They will manage. Like if I want to do something like to stay longer or whatever it is, like it's not a big problem.
Yes. So last question. Bitcoin. Are you a believer or a non-believer?
So, is this a question on cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin specifically?
It's Bitcoin specific. I am a Bitcoin specific person. So the question is, of course, you can talk about the others, but if you believe or not, is in Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah. So I am. Why does it have to be so polarized? I am a believer in the transaction method, like the technology, etc. I really am very bullish on. I think there is the biggest problem with Bitcoin is that it has it's equally valuable to just as cash as criminals and to like it's easy to exploit for bad purposes, and that's the only caveat I have. But I am a believer in Bitcoin in general, and I think that over time we will see somehow like it getting accepted probably in more and more places as a means of payment. The volatility, of course, is too high. So what needs to happen before that is that large companies, we saw Tesla, maybe more modern companies, if they start building up enough of hedging mechanisms so that they can have a stable price for their goods in Bitcoin, then maybe we see it coming into utility. Right now, it's more of a speculative store of value, or somehow a laundering mechanism for criminals, and that's not a place I would like to be in, and not as a company either. But long term, I definitely believe that Bitcoin will have a place in society.
Okay, I don't want to know the purpose of this question is, like I said, it's a little bit binary.
Yeah.
Is to create it's kind of data bank. It's more like a pool.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about Bitcoin some other day. I think you are with an outdated vision and maybe a little bit biased of Bitcoin. It has changed from this. And the reason why I'm interested more in Bitcoin and less in the other cryptocurrencies is the monetary policy. So like knowing about Bitcoin made me learn about money and about the role of money in society and about economics, and it has changed a lot my view of life and the world. So and I think Bitcoin has properties that no other coin or blockchain has, and this is the only one that can change things in the world because of these immutability properties that come with proof of work, that comes with distribution. So it's a very interesting topic. Don't keep your mind and your heart open to it, because there's much more to it than the possibility of money laundering. I'm sure you know that there's much more money laundering in the dollar than in Bitcoin.
No, I'm
in Bitcoin.
I know. Yeah, of course, I know that kind of stuff, and that's why I said it's exactly like cash in that sense. So it's not. I know that.
Look, my friends, thank you so much. I don't know if you want to tell people where they can get in touch with you, if you are active in some social media where people can get to know more about you. And if you can share this here now. And
yeah, so thank you. No, I'm actually not very active on social media. It's a little bit of an ideological thing that maybe. So, but if you want to get in touch and have meaningful conversations, it's probably through LinkedIn or email, and that's easy to find, of course. So that's my preferred method.